The massive Kethvar fleet moved through the void like a swarm of predatory insects, their biomechanical ships pulsing with organic energy. Admiral Zexthai stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Hunger, his forearms crossed behind his chitinous back as he gazed at the star charts displaying their destination. The human so-called border lay just ahead. Pathetic, Zexthai clicked in the guttural language of his people. These soft-skinned mammals dare to claim territory that rightfully belongs to the Kethvar Empire. His tactical officer, a younger Kethvar with bright green carapace markings, approached with nervous energy. Admiral, our scouts report unusual readings from the human boundary zone. There appear to be significantly more ships than our intelligence suggested. Zexthai's mandibles spread in what passed for a dismissive laugh among his species. More ships? These humans barely achieved faster than light travel 50 cycles ago. Their entire fleet couldn't match a single one of our dreadnoughts. He turned to face the bridge crew, his 6 compound eyes gleaming with confidence. The Kethvar have conquered 47 star systems. We have crushed the proud Velteron Navy, absorbed the technologically advanced Hiru Collective, and broken the will of the warlike Zephyrians. What makes these humans think they can stand against us? The tactical display showed the approaching boundary, a seemingly arbitrary line drawn through space by the upstart human government calling itself Terran Command. For 3 months, the humans had denied passage rights to Kethvar merchants and military vessels, claiming exclusive territorial rights to this entire sector. The audacity was breathtaking. "Sir," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the humans." "On screen," Zexthai ordered, curious to see what these primitives had to say. The main display flickered to life, showing a human male in a crisp blue uniform. Unlike the fragile-looking specimens in their intelligence files, this one carried himself with unmistakable military bearing. His eyes were cold and calculating as they met Zexthai's gaze through the transmission. "I'm Admiral Sarah Chen of Terran Command," the human said, her voice steady and professional. "You are approaching the Terran exclusion zone. State your business." Zexthai stepped forward, allowing his full 8-foot height to dominate the screen. "I am Admiral Zexthai of the Kethvar Imperial Navy. We do not recognize your authority over this sector. Stand aside or be swept aside." The human's expression didn't change. "Admiral Zexthai, you are hereby ordered to halt your advance and reverse course. The passage you seek is denied. This is your only warning." The bridge erupted in clicking laughter from the Kethvar crew. Zexthai raised a hand for silence before responding. "Human, your species is new to the galactic community. Perhaps you don't understand the natural order. The strong take what they will, and the weak suffer what they must. We are the strong." Admiral Chen's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Admiral, I'm going to give you the benefit of assuming you don't understand the situation. Terran Command has declared this sector closed to all foreign military vessels. You will turn around or you will be turned around. By what force?" Zexthai demanded, genuine amusement in his voice. "We have 500 ships of the line, including 12 planet killers. What could you possibly do to stop us?" For the first time, Admiral Chen smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Try us and find out." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Kethvar bridge in stunned silence. Zexthai stared at the empty screen for several moments before turning to his sensor operator. "Report," he commanded. "Sir, we're detecting approximately 300 human vessels along their border. Most appear to be destroyers and frigates, though we're reading several larger signatures that could be battleships." Zexthai processed this information. 300 ships was more than their intelligence had suggested, but still manageable. "Very well. Signal the fleet. We proceed as planned. These humans need to learn their place in the galactic hierarchy." As the Kethvar armada resumed its advance toward the human border, Zexthai allowed himself a moment of philosophical reflection. Every species that achieved spaceflight went through the same predictable phases. Wonder at the vastness of space, excitement at discovering they weren't alone, and finally, bitter disappointment when they realized their place in the cosmic pecking order. The humans would be no different. They might put up a token resistance, most species did for the sake of pride, but ultimately they would submit. The Kethvar Empire had protocols for these situations. They would cripple the human fleet, occupy their core worlds for a few years until compliance was assured, then install a puppet government that would serve Kethvar interests. "Admiral," the tactical officer called out, "the humans are repositioning their forces. They're not retreating." "Of course they're not," Zextai replied with satisfaction. Typical mammalian stubbornness. They'll make this harder on themselves than necessary. He settled into his command chair, a biomechanical throne that interfaced directly with his nervous system. Signal all ships, prepare for battle. Let's give these humans a lesson they won't forget. The HFY fleet formed into their standard attack formation, a massive arrowhead designed to punch through enemy lines and split opposing forces. It had worked against the Velteron's disciplined ranks, scattered the Hiru's technological superiority, and broken the Zephyrians' warrior pride. As they approached the invisible line that marked the human border, Zextai felt the familiar rush of anticipation that came before victory. Soon the humans would understand what every other species had learned. The galaxy belonged to the strong, and the HFY were stronger than anyone. The first human warning shots lit up the darkness ahead. Brilliant flashes of directed energy that passed harmlessly in front of the lead HFY ships. A gesture of defiance, nothing more. Zexatai's smile revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth as he gave the order that would change everything. All ships, engage the enemy. The first salvo from the HFY fleet illuminated space like a deadly aurora. Plasma bolts and bioacid torpedoes streaked toward the human line, weapons that had melted the armor of a dozen conquered species. Zexatai watched with professional satisfaction as the barrage approached the human ships. Then something impossible happened. Instead of the expected explosions and debris, the human vessels simply weren't there anymore. Where 300 ships had been moments before, space stood empty except for the fading traces of engine signatures. What? Zextai's mandibles clicked in confusion. Where did they go? His sensor operator frantically worked his console, compound eyes reflecting the glow of multiple displays. Sir, I'm detecting massive gravimetric distortions throughout the sector. The humans appear to have jumped away. Jumped? Zextai's voice rose to a harsh screech. In formation? During combat? That's impossible. Every species capable of faster-than-light travel knew the fundamental rules. Jump calculations required time and precision. Mass jumps were suicidal. Combat jumps were theoretically possible, but practically insane due to the computational complexity. No one attempted formation jumps during active engagement because the gravitational interference would tear ships apart. Sir, the communications officer announced, his voice trembling. We're receiving another transmission from the humans. Admiral Chen appeared on screen again, but now she was clearly aboard a different ship. Behind her, Zextai could see crew members moving with calm efficiency, no sign of panic or desperation. Admiral Zextai, Chen said pleasantly, I hope that demonstration clarified our position. You now have two choices. Withdraw immediately or we will withdraw you. Impossible, Zextai roared. No species can perform combat jumps. Your ships should be scattered across 3 systems or reduced to atomic debris. Chen's smile widened slightly. Admiral, you're operating under some outdated assumptions about human capabilities. Let me help you update your tactical database. The transmission ended and Zextai's tactical display immediately lit up with new contacts. The human fleet had reappeared, but now they surrounded the HFY formation in a perfect sphere. Somehow, in the space of minutes, they had jumped from a defensive line to a complete encirclement. How many ships? Zextai demanded. Sir, I'm reading over 800 human vessels now. They keep appearing on our sensors. Zextai stared at the tactical display in growing unease. The humans had tripled their fleet size in moments, positioning their forces with mathematical precision around his armada. The implications were staggering. Not just the technological capability to perform such maneuvers, but the tactical sophistication to coordinate them. Signal the fleet, he ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. Maintain formation. These humans are using some kind of trick. Advanced holographics, perhaps, or sensor ghosts, but even as he spoke, the human ships opened fire. The barrage that struck the HFY fleet was unlike anything in Zextai's experience. Instead of the crude kinetic weapons or simple energy beams he expected from a primitive species, the humans unleashed a coordinated symphony of destruction. Gravitational shears twisted space itself around HFY vessels. Quantum disruption fields caused molecular bonds to simply stop functioning. Temporal distortion weapons aged sections of hull plating by centuries and seconds. The HFY battleship Relentless Pride simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but somehow deleted from reality. The cruiser Blood of Conquest folded in on itself as local spacetime became impossible geometry. A squadron of destroyers found their hulls converted to exotic matter that obeyed different physical laws. Shields, Zexathai screamed, but his crew was already implementing every defensive measure they knew. Nothing worked. The bioadaptive armor that had shrugged off Veltaran plasma cannons melted like ice under a blowtorch. The quantum-shifted hulls that had deflected Hiru particle beams crumpled like paper. The psi-reinforced barriers that had resisted Zephyrian mental attacks offered no protection against weapons that attacked the fundamental structure of reality itself. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, his voice high with panic. "We're losing ships faster than our computers can track. The humans are using weapons we don't understand." Zexathai watched in horror as another section of his fleet simply vanished. Not destroyed, vanished. The ships were there one moment, gone the next, leaving only quantum echoes and confused sensor readings. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "the humans are hailing us again." "On screen," Zexathai ordered, though every instinct screamed at him to flee. Admiral Chen appeared again, her expression now deadly serious. "Admiral Zexathai, you have lost 37 vessels in the past 4 minutes. I'm prepared to stop this demonstration if you're willing to listen to reason." "What are you?" Zexathai whispered, his usual arrogance completely shattered. "We're humans," Chen replied simply, "and this is our territory. We've posted the boundaries clearly, filed the appropriate territorial claims with the Galactic Council, and issued warnings to all approaching vessels. You chose to ignore those warnings. Another wave of human weapons fire swept through the Kethvar formation, and another dozen ships disappeared from existence. The survivors tried to return fire, but their targeting systems couldn't lock onto the human vessels, which seemed to phase in and out of normal spacetime. "This is impossible," Zexathai muttered. "We have conquered dozens of species. Our technology is proven. Our tactics are sound. How can primitive mammals do this to us?" Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. "Admiral, I'm going to give you some free advice. The next time you encounter a species you've never fought before, don't assume they're primitive. Don't assume your tactics will work, and definitely don't assume they're weaker than you just because they look different." The human fleet had stopped firing, but they maintained their perfect encirclement. Zexathai looked at his tactical display and felt something he hadn't experienced since he was a young warrior: genuine fear. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "For you to turn around and leave," Chen replied. "Take your remaining ships, return to Kethavar space, and inform your government that the Terran exclusion zone is not a suggestion." Zexathai's pride warred with his survival instincts. The Kethavar Empire had never retreated from a battle, but they had never faced anything like this either. Zexathai's compound eyes darted across the tactical display, counting his losses. 43 ships gone in less than 10 minutes and not destroyed in any conventional sense, simply erased from existence. His remaining vessels huddled together like frightened animals, while the human fleet maintained their impossible encirclement. "Open a channel to Kethvar Command," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. The communications officer hesitated. "Sir, the humans might intercept." "Do it." Moments later, the stern visage of Supreme Admiral Kixnar appeared on the secondary screen. The leader of the Kethvar military bore the scars of 100 battles across his carapace, and his 6 eyes held the cold intelligence that had conquered half the known galaxy. "Admiral Zexathai," Kixnar's voice carried the authority of absolute power. "Your progress report is overdue. I trust the human problem has been resolved?" Zexathai felt his thoracic cavity constrict with shame. "Supreme Admiral, we have encountered unexpected resistance. The humans possess military technology far beyond our intelligence estimates. I request immediate reinforcement from the 2nd and 3rd battle fleets." A long silence followed. When Kixnar spoke again, his voice carried deadly calm. "Admiral, are you telling me that the Kethvar Imperial Navy, the force that crushed the combined fleets of the Veltaran Defense Coalition, is being held at bay by mammals who discovered space travel 50 cycles ago?" "Sir, their capabilities are not what we expected. They can perform formation jumps during active combat. Their weapons function on principles we don't understand, and their fleet size appears to be significantly larger than reported." Kixnar's mandibles spread in displeasure. "Admiral Zexathai, you command 500 ships of the line. You carry enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Are you seriously requesting reinforcements to deal with 300 primitive vessels? 800 vessels, sir. Possibly more. And Supreme Admiral, they're not primitive. The silence stretched longer this time. Finally, Kixnar leaned forward, his image filling the screen. Admiral, the Empire's reputation is at stake. Every conquered species is watching to see how we handle this human defiance. If word spreads that a single Kethvar fleet was turned away by mammals, he let the implications hang in the air. You will break through their lines and establish Kethvar authority in that sector. You will do this within the next 6 hours, or you will face the consequences of failure. The transmission ended, leaving Zexthai staring at a blank screen. He turned to find his entire bridge crew watching him with expressions he'd never seen before. Doubt. Sir, the tactical officer ventured carefully. Perhaps we should consider a strategic withdrawal to— No. Zexthai's voice cut like a plasma blade. Signal the fleet. We form attack formation Velteran Prime. All ships. Prepare for concentrated assault on the human vessels directly ahead. But sir, we don't know what they're capable of. I know exactly what they're capable of, Zexthai snarled. Trickery and illusion. No species can violate the fundamental laws of physics. Whatever they're doing, it's a deception designed to make us believe they're stronger than they are. The Kethvar fleet began to move, forming the massive spearhead formation that had broken enemy lines across dozens of star systems. Biomechanical ships pulsed with organic energy as their crews prepared for battle. Weapon systems that had devastated planetary surfaces charged to full power. Sir, the sensor operator reported. The humans they're not moving. They're maintaining position and formation. Zexthai allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Of course they're not moving. They know their deception is about to be exposed. Signal all ships, full assault, maximum firepower. Show these mammals what the Kethvar Empire does to those who stand in our way. The attack began with a barrage that lit up space itself. 500 ships unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids. Bioacid torpedoes that could eat through any known armor. Gravity bombs that could crush a space station to the size of a marble. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize a small moon. The weapon struck the human formation and did nothing, not deflected, not absorbed. The energy simply ceased to exist as it approached the human ships, as if an invisible barrier consumed the attacks without trace. Impossible, Zexthai breathed. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system without being hailed. Admiral Zexthai, was that your best effort? Because I have to say I'm disappointed. We expected more from the species that conquered the Velterans. How are you doing this? Zexthai demanded. No defense can stop that level of firepower. You're thinking about this wrong, Chen replied, her voice carrying a note of what sounded like pity. You're still assuming we're using technology, you understand. Let me demonstrate what we actually consider a response to aggression. The space around the Kethvar fleet suddenly filled with something. Not ships exactly. Objects that hurt to look at directly. Geometries that shouldn't exist, structures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space allowed. The human fleet hadn't grown larger. Reality around them had become more complex. Sir, the sensor operator reported, his voice breaking with stress. I'm reading spatial distortions throughout the area. Local physics appear to be changing. Zexthai felt a cold weight settle in his stomach as he realized what he was seeing. They're not using advanced technology, he whispered. They're manipulating the laws of physics themselves. Admiral, Chen's voice continued calmly. You have 2 minutes to begin withdrawal before we demonstrate what humans consider appropriate force. I suggest you don't test us. But Zexthai was no longer listening. His mind reeled as he processed the implications. The humans hadn't just developed better weapons or faster ships. They had somehow gained control over the fundamental forces that governed reality itself. They could delete matter from existence, alter space-time, and apparently rewrite physical laws at will. Sir, the communications officer shouted, we're receiving priority signals from throughout Kethvar space. The Second Fleet has encountered human vessels at the Rigel border. The Third Fleet reports engagement with unknown human forces in the Centauri sector. Zexthai's blood chilled. How many ships? Sir, the humans appear to have fleets everywhere. Thousands of vessels, possibly tens of thousands. They're not defending just this sector. They've established boundaries around hundreds of star systems simultaneously. The magnitude of what they faced began to sink in. This wasn't a border skirmish with an upstart species. The humans had somehow deployed forces across vast stretches of space, establishing territorial claims on a scale that dwarfed even the Kethvar Empire. 1 minute remaining, Admiral Chen announced. Zexthai stared at the countdown timer on his display. 30 seconds until Admiral Chen's deadline expired. Around him, his bridge crew waited in terrified silence, their compound eyes reflecting the impossible geometries that now surrounded their fleet. The space itself seemed alive, pulsing with energies that made their biomechanical ship's organic components writhe in instinctive fear. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered. "Orders?" For the first time in his military career, Admiral Zexthai of the Kethvar Imperial Navy had no answer. Every tactical doctrine he'd learned, every strategic principle he'd mastered, every victory he'd achieved, all of it was useless against an enemy that could rewrite reality itself. The timer reached 0. "I'm sorry you chose this path." Admiral Chen's voice came through the speakers with genuine regret. What happened next would be remembered in Kethvar military academies as the moment their empire learned humility. The human response wasn't an attack, it was a lesson. Space around the Kethvar fleet began to change. Not violently, but with the inexorable certainty of a natural law. The bio-armor plating on their ships didn't melt or crack. Instead, it became transparent, allowing the horrified crews to see through their own hulls into the void beyond. "Sir," the engineering officer reported, in a voice barely above a whisper, "our hull integrity is unchanged, but we can see through our own ships." Zexthai looked out the bridge windows and nearly lost his composure entirely. His flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Hunger, had become a ghost ship. He could see every detail of its internal structure, every corridor and chamber, every crew member moving through passages that were somehow both solid and transparent simultaneously. "The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies," the communications officer announced. "Put it through," Zexthai ordered, though he dreaded what he would hear. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge, but now it carried an undertone that made Zexthai's exoskeleton ache. "Admiral, what you're experiencing is a minor adjustment to the electromagnetic properties of your hull materials. Your ships are perfectly functional and safe. This is merely a demonstration." "Demonstration of what?" Zexthai managed to ask. "Of the difference between our species' approach to conflict," Chen replied. "You see warfare as the application of superior force. You conquered other species because you had bigger ships, more powerful weapons, stronger armor. You think in terms of better technology." The transparent hulls of the Kethvar ships suddenly began to glow with soft, pulsing light. Not emergency lighting. The ships themselves had become luminous like deep-sea creatures from the ocean worlds of Kethvar Prime. "We don't think in terms of better technology," Chen continued. "We think in terms of understanding reality itself. What you call laws of physics are more like guidelines, suggestions, and we've learned to make our own suggestions to the universe." Zexthai watched in fascination and terror as his fleet was transformed into something beautiful and impossible. The biomechanical ships that had struck fear into dozens of species now looked like artworks made of light and shadow, their organic curves highlighted in ways that emphasized their alien grace rather than their predatory menace. "But sir," his sensor operator called out, "our weapon systems, our engines, our life support, everything is still functional." "Of course it is," Chen said, apparently monitoring their communications. "We're not trying to harm you. We're trying to educate you. Tell me, Admiral, how long do you think it took us to make these modifications to your entire fleet?" Zexthai checked the chronometer. 37 seconds, correct. "Now, Admiral, I want you to imagine what we could have done in those 37 seconds if we were actually trying to destroy you." The implication hit Zexthai like a physical blow. If the humans could transform his entire fleet's physical properties in half a minute, what could they have done if they'd wanted to cause harm? Delete his ships from existence? Convert them into energy? Turn them inside out through dimensional manipulation? "You're toying with us," he said quietly. "No," Chen's voice was firm. "We're being patient with you. There's a difference. Admiral, your people have built an impressive empire through military conquest. You've mastered biotechnology, developed powerful weapons, created ships that can travel between stars. By any reasonable measure, the Kethvar are an advanced and capable species." A pause, Then Chen continued with devastating gentleness. But you're still thinking in terms of physics. We've moved beyond that. We don't build faster ships, we convince space to be smaller. We don't create stronger armor. We persuade reality that our ships don't exist in the same dimension as incoming weapons. We don't develop better weapons. We ask the universe to remove problems from existence. The glowing effect on the Kethvar ships began to fade, but their hulls remained transparent. Zexthai could see his crew members moving through the ship like insects in amber, going about their duties despite the impossible circumstances. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're receiving updates from the 2nd and 3rd fleets. They report similar encounters with human forces. Supreme Admiral Kixnar is requesting immediate strategic consultation." Zexthai almost laughed at the absurdity. Strategic consultation? What strategy could possibly work against opponents who could edit reality itself? "Admiral Zexthai," Chen's voice continued, "I'm going to show you something that I hope will save lives on both sides." The main display activated, showing a tactical map of the galaxy. Kethvar territory was marked in red, a substantial portion of local space encompassing hundreds of systems. But as Zexthai watched, blue markers began appearing throughout the display. Human territorial claims. The scale was breathtaking. The humans weren't just claiming the border sector that had sparked this confrontation. They had established boundaries around thousands of star systems, creating a network of protected space that dwarfed the Kethvar Empire by orders of magnitude. "This is impossible," Zexthai breathed. "Your species has only been in space for 50 cycles. How can you have spread so far?" "Time isn't as linear as you think," Chen replied. "We've been preparing for galactic contact for much longer than our first FTL flight might suggest. We've been watching, learning, and establishing our presence in ways your sensors couldn't detect." More blue markers appeared on the display, and Zexthai realized with growing horror that they weren't just showing current human territory. They were showing human presence throughout history. The markers extended backward in time, revealing that humans had been active in galactic affairs for centuries, possibly millennia, while maintaining the illusion of being a young spacefaring species. "How long have you been out here?" he whispered. "Long enough," Chen said simply. "Long enough to learn about the Kethvar Empire, the species you've conquered, the methods you use. Long enough to decide that your expansion stops here." The display zoomed in on local space, showing the current positions of all 3 Kethvar fleets. Each was surrounded by human forces that outnumbered them by factors of 10 or more. "Admiral," Chen said, her voice carrying finality, "you have one opportunity to avoid a war that your species cannot win. Return to Kethvar space. Inform your leadership that humanity is not another conquest to be added to your empire. Accept the territorial boundaries we've established and we can coexist peacefully." "And if we refuse?" Zexthai asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then you'll discover what humans consider a proportional response to aggression." "And Admiral?" Chen's voice carried a note of sadness. "You really don't want that." Supreme Admiral Kixnar's image flickered on the emergency communication channel, his scarred carapace seeming to pulse with barely contained rage. Behind him, Zexthai could see the command center of the Kethvar Imperial Fortress, where dozens of military advisors scurried between displays showing the positions of their beleaguered fleets. "Admiral Zexthai," Kixnar's voice carried the cold fury of absolute authority, threatened, "I have reviewed the tactical reports from all 3 engagement zones. What you describe is impossible. No species can manipulate physics itself. You will immediately engage the human forces with full intensity and break through their lines." Zexthai felt his thoracic cavity constrict with dread. "Supreme Admiral, respectfully, the humans' capabilities far exceed anything in our tactical database. A direct assault would be cowardice." Kixnar's roar cut across the transmission. "The Kethvar Empire has never retreated from battle. We have conquered 47 star systems through superior will and firepower. I will not have our reputation destroyed by an admiral who lacks the courage to face mammals." Around the bridge, Zexthai's crew exchanged glances of barely concealed terror. They had witnessed firsthand what the humans could do, had watched their ships become transparent while remaining functional, had seen weapons that deleted matter from existence. But Supreme Admiral Kixnar had not. To him, this was still about reputation, about imperial pride, about maintaining the fear that kept conquered worlds in line. "Sir," Zexthai tried again, "perhaps if you could speak directly with Admiral Chen, Establish some form of diplomatic diplomacy? Kixanar's mandibles spread wide in contempt. With species that refuse to acknowledge Kethavar superiority? Admiral, you will follow your orders or face court-martial for treason. Deploy the world-breaker weapons. Show these humans what happens when they challenge the Empire. Zexthai's blood turned to ice in his veins. The world-breaker weapons were planet killers, devices of such destructive power that their use was reserved for the complete annihilation of rebel worlds. They had been used only twice in Kethavar history, turning thriving planets into radioactive wastelands that would remain uninhabitable for millennia. Sir, the deployment of world-breaker weapons against a sapient species would violate 17 different galactic treaties. The consequences will be manageable, Kixnar cut him off. The other species fear us because they believe we are willing to do anything to maintain our dominance. If we show weakness now, every conquered world will rise in rebellion. Deploy the weapons. That is a direct order. The transmission ended, leaving Zexthai staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited in horrified silence. Everyone knew what world-breaker weapons did. Everyone also knew what the humans had demonstrated they were capable of. Sir, his tactical officer spoke carefully. The weapons technicians are requesting confirmation of the deployment order. Zexthai closed his eyes, feeling the weight of command crushing down on him. He could disobey the order and face execution for treason, or he could follow it and potentially trigger a war with beings who could rewrite reality itself. Neither option offered survival. Weapons control. He spoke into his communicator, his voice hollow. This is Admiral Zexthai. You are authorized to deploy world-breaker weapons. Target the largest concentration of human vessels. Sir, the weapons officer's voice carried obvious reluctance. World-breaker deployment requires a 30-minute charging sequence. Should we inform the humans of our intentions? Before Zexthai could answer, Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge once again. Admiral, I'm disappointed. We've been monitoring your communications with Kethavar Command. World-breaker weapons, really? Her tone carried the same patient sadness a teacher might use with a particularly stubborn student. I had hoped your leadership would be more reasonable. You've been monitoring our communications? Zexthai asked, though he was no longer surprised by anything the humans could do. Admiral, we've been monitoring your communications for the past 2 centuries. We know about every Kethavar military installation, every ship design, every weapon system. We know about the 3 worlds you sterilized with those weapons. We know about the slave labor camps on Veltaran Prime. We know about the biological experiments on Hiru prisoners. The weight of that statement settled on Zexthai like a crushing gravitational field. If the humans had been watching for 2 centuries, if they knew about the Empire's darkest secrets. The children on Zephyrian Colony 7. Chen continued quietly. The ones your forces used for target practice. We know about them too. Zexthai felt something break inside his chest. Colony 7 was classified beyond classified, an incident that existed only in the most secret military archives. If the humans knew about that, what do you want from us? He whispered. What we've always wanted, Chen replied. For you to stop. No more conquests, no more enslaved species, no more worlds turned to ash because they refuse to submit. The age of Kethavar expansion is over, and if we refuse, the space around the Kethavar fleet suddenly changed again, but this time the transformation was terrifying in its implications. Instead of the gentle demonstrations they had witnessed before, reality itself seemed to fracture. Stars moved in the background, their light bending and twisting as space-time became fluid. The laws of physics didn't just bend, they shattered. Admiral, Chen's voice carried infinite sadness. Let me show you what proportional response means to humanity. In the distance, a star simply stopped existing. Not exploded, not collapsed, it was deleted from reality as if it had never been. The shock waves of non-existence rippled outward, causing nearby celestial bodies to shift and dance as space-time tried to adjust to the sudden absence of stellar mass. That was an uninhabited system, Chen explained, her voice clinical now. No planets, no life, nothing of value. But as you can see, when humans decide something should not exist, it ceases to exist. The star, its solar wind, its gravitational influence, even the light it had emitted over the past 1,000,000 years, all deleted from the timeline. Zexthai stared at the impossible sight, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The humans hadn't just destroyed a star, they had retroactively unmade it, editing it out of history itself. Now imagine, Chen continued, what happens if you deploy those world-breaker weapons? Imagine what happens if you force us to respond with equivalent force to the threat you represent. The tactical display showed the Kethvar Empire in red, hundreds of systems spanning dozens of sectors. As Zexthai watched, the human fleet positions updated, revealing that every single Kethvar world was within range of forces that could delete solar systems from existence. The choice is yours, Admiral, Chen said. Order your fleets to stand down and withdraw, or discover what it means to threaten a species that has learned to unmake reality itself. But choose quickly. Your world-breaker weapons will finish charging in 23 minutes, and I will not allow them to be fired. On his tactical display, Zexthai could see the other Kethvar fleets receiving similar ultimatums. Across the Empire, hundreds of worlds waited in the balance, their existence dependent on his next decision. For the first time in his life, Admiral Zexthai understood what it meant to be truly powerless. Zexthai stared at the chronometer as precious seconds ticked away, 18 minutes until the world-breaker weapons reached full charge. Around him, his bridge crew waited in paralyzed terror, understanding that their next actions would determine not just their own fate, but the survival of their entire species. Signal all ships, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Stand down, weapons. Halt the charging sequence, sir, his tactical officer asked, compound eyes wide with disbelief. Stand down, Zexthai roared, the weight of command and crushing responsibility making his voice crack. Signal the second and third fleets. All vessels are to power down weapons and await further orders. The bridge erupted in a flurry of activity as his crew rushed to implement the order. Across the 3 battle zones, Kethvar ships began powering down their weapon systems, their bioluminescent hull patterns shifting from aggressive red to passive blue. Admiral Chen, Zexthai spoke to the communications pickup. The Kethvar fleets are standing down. Weapons are powered down. We surrender. A long pause followed, then Chen's voice returned with unmistakable relief. Thank you, Admiral. You've made the right choice. Your ships and crews are safe. But I need to understand, Zexthai continued, his voice gaining strength. How? How did humans develop these capabilities? Your species achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 cycles ago. The intelligence reports, the galactic surveys, they all confirmed humanity was a young civilization. That's a fair question, Chen replied.
And since you've chosen wisdom over destruction, I think you deserve an honest answer.
But it's complicated. Are you willing to listen? Do I have a choice? A sound that might have been laughter came through the speakers. Admiral, you always have a choice. That's something humans learned a long time ago. Very well. The truth about humanity begins about 3,000 years ago, during what we call the Great Silence. The main display shifted, showing Earth as it appeared from space. A blue marble swirled with white clouds, beautiful and peaceful. 3 millennia ago, Chen continued, humanity faced what appeared to be extinction. Climate change, resource depletion, nuclear weapons, biological warfare. We had developed the power to destroy ourselves and were using it enthusiastically. Our population dropped to fewer than 1 million individuals scattered across underground shelters. The image changed to show vast underground complexes, cities carved from living rock where humans struggled to survive. But humans have one trait that apparently makes us unique in the galaxy. We refuse to accept that anything is impossible. While other species might have focused on rebuilding technology or expanding into space, humans focused on understanding why we had failed. We studied consciousness, reality, the nature of existence itself. New images appeared, laboratories filled with strange equipment, humans connected to devices that seemed to merge technology with biology, experiments that hurt to look at directly. We discovered that consciousness isn't just an emergent property of complex neural networks, Chen explained. Consciousness is the fundamental force that shapes reality. Every sentient being influences the universe simply by observing it, but most species never learn to do so deliberately. Zexthai felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. You're saying you learned to control reality through force of will? Not exactly will, Chen corrected. Understanding. Reality isn't fixed, it's a collaborative creation between consciousness and quantum possibility. Most species accept the laws of physics as immutable truths. Humans learned they're more like habits that reality has developed over time. The display showed human children in training facilities, their minds connected to machines that visualized thought patterns, learning to perceive dimensions beyond the normal three. For 2,000 years, we practiced. We learned to see reality as it truly is, a fluid, changeable system that responds to focused consciousness. We developed techniques to align human thought with quantum probability, to guide universal forces through group meditation, to convince space-time itself to behave differently. That's impossible, Zextai protested, though his voice lacked conviction. He had seen what the humans could do. Admiral, you come from a warrior culture. You understand that mastery requires practice, dedication, and generations of refinement. Your people spent millennia perfecting biotechnology and military tactics. We spent millennia perfecting our relationship with existence itself. The images shifted to show massive complexes in space, not built but grown, structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When we finally achieved conventional spaceflight, Chen continued, we had already been exploring the galaxy through consciousness projection for centuries. We established monitoring posts, studied other species, learned about galactic civilization. We watched the Kethvar Empire rise and expand. We saw what you did to conquered worlds. Zextai felt shame burn in his chest. You could have intervened. You could have stopped us. We could have, Chen agreed. But humans learned something important during our near extinction. Forced change doesn't last. People, any sentient people, have to choose to evolve. We decided to wait until the galactic community was ready for a different kind of civilization. And now we are? Now you have a choice, Chen said simply. The Kethvar Empire can continue as it has, expanding through conquest and domination. If you choose that path, humanity will ensure your expansion stops here. We will defend every species you try to conquer, protect every world you try to claim. Your empire will spend its resources fighting enemies that can delete fleets from existence. The tactical display shifted, showing potential futures branching out like a tree. In one branch, the Kethvar Empire remained unchanged, but found itself unable to expand, constantly battling human forces across thousands of light years. In another branch, Kethvar territory began to shift and change. Or, Chen continued, you can choose evolution, the conquered species in your empire. What if they became partners instead of slaves? What if Kethvar biotechnology was shared freely instead of used for domination? What if your military might was directed toward exploration and protection instead of conquest? Zextai studied the branching futures on the display. In the evolution branch, he saw Kethvar ships working alongside vessels from dozens of species, their biotechnology helping to terraform dead worlds, their military protecting trade routes instead of raiding them. You're asking us to abandon everything we are, he said quietly. No, Chen replied firmly. We're asking you to become everything you could be. The Kethvar are master bioengineers, skilled warriors, natural leaders. Those traits could build a galactic civilization instead of destroying one. A new voice entered the transmission. Supreme Admiral Kixnar, his image appearing on the secondary screen. But instead of the rage Zextai expected, the Empire's leader appeared, thoughtful. Admiral Chen, Kixnar said formally, I have been monitoring this conversation. I have also received detailed reports about your fleet capabilities from all three engagement zones. I have one question. If we choose evolution over conquest, will humanity assist us in this transformation? Supreme Admiral, Chen replied, humans have spent 3,000 years learning to help reality become better than it was. Teaching other species to do the same would be our greatest honor. Zextai looked between the two admirals and realized he was witnessing the end of one age and the beginning of another. 6 months later, Admiral Zextai stood on the observation deck of the newly christened Unity's Promise, watching as Kethvar bioengineers worked alongside human consciousness shapers and Veltaran technicians to grow the first truly collaborative starship. The vessel was beautiful in its impossibility, part technology, part living organism, part crystallized thought given form in three-dimensional space. It's magnificent, Admiral Chen said, joining him at the observation window. She wore the new uniform of the Galactic Cooperation Council, a simple design that incorporated symbols from dozens of member species. Your people's bioengineering expertise combined with our reality-shaping techniques and Veltaran computational matrices. The ship thinks itself into existence each morning. Zextai clicked his mandibles, and what humans had learned was the Kethvar equivalent of laughter. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I would be working with mammals and domesticated prey species to build impossible vessels, I would have had them executed for mental illness. And now? Now I wonder how we survived so long being stupid. He turned to look at Chen with his compound eyes. Your species' patience is remarkable. You watched us commit atrocities for centuries and never intervened directly. Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Humans learned something important when we nearly destroyed ourselves. You can't force wisdom on anyone. People have to choose to grow. If we had conquered the Kethvar Empire by force, you would have remained conquerors in your hearts, waiting for the chance to rebel. But when you chose to evolve, she gestured to the ship being born before them. This is what becomes possible. Through the window, they watched as a section of the ship's hull developed a new biomechanical organ, something that would allow it to exist partially outside normal space-time. The human consciousness shapers guided the growth through meditation, while Kethvar bioengineers provided the genetic templates, and Veltaran computers calculated the dimensional mathematics. The other conquered species, Zexthai said quietly. Are they adapting well to their freedom? Better than we hoped, Chen replied. The Hiru Collective has established 17 new research colonies. Their scientists are working with human consciousness shapers to develop hybrid technologies we never imagined possible. The Zephyrians have formed a galactic peacekeeping force that uses their warrior culture to protect emerging civilizations instead of conquering them. And the Veltarans? They've become the administrative backbone of the new galactic government. Their attention to detail and organizational skills are exactly what we needed to coordinate between species with radically different biologies and thought patterns. Zexthai studied the records on his tablet, reviewing the transformation his empire had undergone. The transition has not been without challenges. Some Kethvar colonies have struggled with the concept of voluntary cooperation. Generations of conquest-based culture don't disappear overnight, which is why change takes time, Chen said gently, and why it has to be a choice that's made again and again every day by every individual. Your people chose evolution over extinction, but evolution is an ongoing process, not a single decision. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. The image that appeared on the communication screen was Supreme Admiral Kixnar, but he looked dramatically different from the scarred warrior who had ordered the deployment of world-breaker weapons 6 months ago. His carapace had been modified with biomechanical interfaces that allowed him to commune directly with the living ships, and his eyes held a depth of understanding that came from months of human consciousness training. Admiral Zexthai, Admiral Chen, Kixnar's voice carried the calm authority of true leadership rather than the brittle dominance of a tyrant. I have news from the Outer Rim. The Shikari hegemony has agreed to join the Cooperation Council. They were impressed by our success in transitioning from empire to partnership, Chen smiled. That's wonderful news. The Shikari have bioneural technologies that could interface beautifully with both human consciousness shaping and Kethvar bioengineering. Indeed, Kixnar agreed. Which brings me to my next announcement. The Council has approved the Deep Space Harmony project. We're going to build a ship capable of traveling between galaxies, not through hyperspace but by convincing space itself to contract around us. Zexthai felt a thrill of excitement. The project represented everything the new galactic order had become. Impossible without cooperation, requiring the best of every species' capabilities, aimed not at conquest but at exploration and understanding. How long until completion? He asked. The human consciousness shapers estimate they'll need 2 years to develop the reality manipulation frameworks necessary for intergalactic travel. Kixnar replied, Your bioengineers believe they can grow a living hull capable of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously within 18 months. The Veltaran computational specialists predict they can calculate navigation algorithms for intergalactic space within 6 months. And the Hiru? Chen asked. They're developing hybrid consciousness technology interfaces that will allow the ship's crew to merge temporarily with the vessel's awareness during transit. The experience should be transformative. After the transmission ended, Zexthai and Chen stood in comfortable silence, watching the Unity's promise continue its growth. Other ships moved through the construction space, vessels from dozens of species, working together to build something greater than the sum of their parts. Admiral Chen, Zexthai said finally, I need to ask you something that's been troubling me. When you showed us the deleted star, when you demonstrated what humans could do if we forced your hand. Was it real? Could you actually have erased the Kethver Empire from existence? Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried infinite sadness. Yes, Admiral. We could have. Not easily, and not without profound consequences for ourselves, but yes. We could have unmade your entire species from the timeline itself, but you chose not to. We chose to offer you the chance to become something better. Every species deserves that chance, Admiral. Every individual consciousness is precious, even when it's trapped in systems of cruelty and domination. Destruction is always easier than transformation, but transformation creates possibilities that destruction can never achieve. Zexthai nodded slowly, understanding flooding through him. The humans hadn't demonstrated their power to intimidate or threaten. They had shown the ultimate consequences of choosing violence over evolution, destruction over creation. Look, Chen said, pointing to the observation window. The Unity's promise had completed its morning self-creation and was beginning to move. Not through space, but through the fundamental layers of reality itself. The ship existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, its consciousness-shaped hull rippling with biomechanical life. Its Velteron navigation systems calculating paths between stars that didn't follow conventional physics. As they watched, the impossible vessel faded from normal space-time and reappeared near a distant star, completing a journey that should have taken months in mere seconds. But more importantly, it did so without violence, without conquest, without leaving destruction in its wake. This is what becomes possible, Chen said softly, when species choose to become more than they were. Zexthai clicked his mandibles in agreement, understanding that they were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization built on cooperation rather than domination, on growth rather than conquest, on the infinite potential that emerged when different forms of consciousness chose to work together, instead of against each other. The age of empire was over. The age of harmony had begun,